viewers, today we are going to talk about complex weaves. They are very different from the basic weaves. You would have already learnt about a couple of basic weaves like plain weave, twill weave, satin weave. So, this class is slightly more advanced than the plain weave class. In today's session, we will talk about complex weaves like Leno, mock Leno, Bedford cord and pique. You know what a Leno weave is? It is different from a plain weave in the sense that in a plain weave only one warp interlaces with one weft and it produces a very plain fabric. But in Leno weave, two or more warp threads interlace with one filling thread. Not only do they interlace, they also cross over each other in a figure 8 pattern and give rise to interesting effects. A Leno fabric is very sheer and it is also durable. It does not show any yarn slippage and it is stronger, it is firmer and it also has good air permeability and light permeability, which means that it allows both air and light to pass through it very freely. So, we can also say that it is a very transparent fabric. Leno weave fabric is also called as gauze or dupe weave. The fabric is primarily used to prevent shifting of fibers in the open weave fabrics. It also maintains uniformity of threads and minimizes distortion of threads. Like I said, two warp yarns are used to make this Leno weave fabric. These two warp yarns are called as stationary ends and looping ends. Leno weave is also used in weaving selvages on shuttleless looms. This Leno weave, which is there on the selvage part of the fabric, locks the yarns and ensures that the fabric does not ravel or the yarns do not slip over. Now, let us see the structure of a Leno weave fabric. The fabric is pretty open, which is because of the crossing of these ends or warps and also the twisting of these ends or warps around the stationary warp or a stationary end. This stationary end is parallel to the fabric length during the weaving process. The crossing ends, on the other hand, appear on the right and left side of the stationary end or the ground end, and these crossing ends appear alternatively on the right and left side of the stationary end. Once the fabric is removed from the loom, the stationary ends bend under the stress of the crossing ends. So, if you look at this picture, you see different colored yarns both in the horizontal way and in the vertical way. Now, the horizontal yarns are blue in color. They represent the filling yarns, whereas the vertical ones, which are in red and green color, represents the warp threads. Now, if you take a closer look at the picture, you can see that both these vertical end yarns or the warp yarns, which are in red and green color, are crossing over each other and they form a figure 8 pattern. So, when they are crossing over each other, the filling that goes inside these two warp yarns gets locked firmly, and that is precisely the reason why you do not see any yarn slippage in Leno weave fabrics. Now, let us see the characteristics of Leno weave fabric. Like we already discussed, it has a very open structure. So, the effect is pretty open. You see a open weave effect. Also, it has very low thread count. Now, what we mean by thread count is the number of yarns that are used are less when compared with other kinds of fabrics. Leno fabric has good dimensional stability and it also has lesser yarn slippage. Now, let us see the properties of Leno weave fabrics. The fabric is pretty transparent. Why do you think the fabric is transparent? It is because the warp yarns which are working in pairs leaves more spaces in between these yarns, or when the yarns are inserted in between these two warp yarns, there is a lot of space created. Because of this, the fabric appears very transparent. Also, when you are using low count yarns, it increases the space in between the interstices. so it leaves the fabric more transparent. Leno fabrics are slip resistant. We already discussed that these fabrics do not show any yarn slippage. So, yarn slippage is less due to the additional interlacing or crossing of the warp yarns in addition to the weft interlacing, because the yarns are pretty firmly locked in between the figure 8 configuration, they do not slip off. Leno fabrics are durable because in addition to regular weft interlacing, there is one more additional warp interlacing too. The fabrics have good air permeability and good light permeability too. What we mean by this is that it allows the light and air to pass through very easily. This particular property of Leno fabrics is very useful when we want to make clothing suitable for warm weather, because it allows the wearer to keep herself or himself cool. Now, what could be the uses of such kind of Leno fabrics? Where are they used? They are used in fashion and home textile sector. They are used in grinding wheel reinforcement. What does it mean? A regular Leno fabric is coated with resin. So, it is baked later to form a composite material. Now, this composite baked Leno fabric is used on a grinding wheel. Grinding wheels, when they are made with this composite material, has excellent heat resistance and they also have strong structural strength. Other uses of these Leno fabrics are lightweight membranes, which means that this Leno fabrics are excellent base material for making lightweight membranes which are used for architectural purposes. So, these membrane panels can be installed and can be removed very quickly because they are light in weight, and they also have pretty good heat insulation and they also have self-cleaning properties. Leno fabrics are also used in medical textiles because of the ideal mesh size and structure of Leno fabrics, and also because of the stability of these fabrics. They are commonly used for wound dressings and for bandaging. Laminated Leno fabrics can be used for packaging a variety of food items, and they can also be used as waterproof lining in geotextiles area, because this waterproof lining will help to avoid water seepage of articles that are packed. Leno fabrics are also used in different agricultural applications too. Leno fabric made with polyethylene yarn is stronger and it prevents damage to the crops. The Leno nets made out of these polyethylene yarns prevent the UV rays from reaching the crop by about 10%, which means they ultimately protect the crop on which they are covered. Leno fabrics are also used to store various goods because of their good structural stability. Leno weave fabrics are also used as filters because of their good mesh size. It can easily filter any solution. Now, to make this Leno fabric, do you think any special machinery is required? Actually, Leno fabric can be made on a simple loom, but you have to use a special attachment to make these Leno fabrics. These special attachments or Leno attachments, they are used to pair up the warp yarns and also help in crossing over of these warp yarns by encircling the weft yarns. In this process, the weft yarns are firmly secured in between the two warp yarns. So, when you take a closer look at this Leno fabric, the structure is biaxial. What are the fabrics that are available in Leno weave? The first and foremost or very commonly available fabric is your gauze. This is the gauze that we use to cover our wounds, and if you take a closer look at the fabric is pretty loose in its structure. It is transparent too, and it is widely used in various medical applications. The cotton gauze is what is used in wound dressings. You also have a metal gauze This is not used in medical textiles though. It is used in other applications like covering the safety lamps and also for fencing a particular area like a fencing material. Another kind of Leno fabric called as grenadine. It's also known as fancy organza. This particular Leno fabric is used as a dress fabric for apparel purposes. Grenadine is made of hard twisted silk or silk and cotton blends. It is also used for curtains, in which case the mesh is larger when compared to the dress fabrics. What I mean by this is, dress fabrics have a very fine texture, whereas the ones that are used for curtains have a pretty open structure or larger mesh size. Marquisette is a sheer, lightweight and open meshed fabric which is used for clothing purposes. It could also be used for curtains and for mosquito nets too. The mesh size in marquisette is slightly larger when compared to grenadine. It is also used for upholstery and also used in various apparel items like wedding gown wheels, formal wear and overskirts for dresses. Another kind of Leno is tulle or net. This is a very fine mesh fabric. It is totally transparent and very light in weight. It is used in wedding gowns and ball gowns and as a wheel in wedding gowns. The other type of Leno fabric is Leno itself, which is made from silk, and this fabric is characterized by stripes, which is plain and Leno stripes alternating together. There are two kinds of stripes again. You see vertical stripes and you see horizontal stripes also. Now, in the next section we are going to talk about mock Leno. Mock Leno is again a derivative weave which can be woven with a minimum number of 4 shafts. This fabric also is open like Leno weave fabric and it also looks like a gauze. A mock Leno weave is simpler to weave when compared to a true Leno weave fabric. When you are weaving a mock Leno fabric, 3 or more warp yarns are interlaced and they are grouped together and they act as a unit. And these unit of 2 or more warp or weft threads pair off in an opposite way with the adjacent group. Because of this kind of interlacing, the openings are formed in the cloth, giving the cloth a very open structure or airy structure. A mock Leno weave can be woven along with a plain weave, which means in the same loom you can have parts of plain weave and you can have parts of mock Leno weave. This gives the resultant fabric a very interesting texture. Areas of opaque fabric and areas of transparent fabric. The areas that are opaque are of plain weave and the areas that are transparent or of mock Leno weave. Pretty commonly you would see both opaque and transparent areas side by side occurring repeatedly over the width of the fabric. So that's the reason why you have a very interesting texture on the fabric. The mock Leno fabrics find their use in shirts, blouses, furnishings, tablecloth, linen, curtains and cushion covers as well. Now, let us see the characteristics of mock Leno weave. Mock Leno fabric has increased fabric thickness and the surface is rough when compared to other ones. The fabric has additional porosity. Porosity is as in more number of pores or more number of open spaces. Now, let us try and compare different properties of Leno fabric and mock Leno fabrics. When we take stability into consideration, Leno fabrics have very good stability when compared with mock Leno ones. When we take drape or drapeability, Leno fabrics have less drape when compared with mock Leno, which means that mock Leno fabrics are more drapeable. They cling to the body or mold to the body. When you have a look at the porosity property or feature, Leno fabrics have more porosity, whereas mock Leno has less porosity. When you look at smoothness, Leno fabrics are less smoother when compared with mock Leno, which means mock Leno fabrics are more smoother than Leno fabrics. If you look at balance, mock Leno fabrics are more balanced when compared with Leno fabrics. When you look at symmetrical property, mock Leno fabrics are more symmetrical when compared with Leno fabrics. When you look at low crimp feature, then Leno fabrics have low crimp when compared with mock Leno. Now, in the next section we are going to talk about Bedford cords. Bedford cords are again a complex weave type of fabrics. The characteristic feature of a Bedford cord is its longitudinal warp lines or cords is what we call it. You would see these cords along the warpway with fine sunken lines in between. This Bedford cord looks very much like a corduroy, but corduroy is very different type of construction when compared with a Bedford cord. The cords in a Bedford cord run in a warpway or in a vertical manner. The cord weave is alternated by a plain weave in a weft way. A good quality Bedford cord is made by using 2-ply yarns both for the face and for the backing. The cords can either be narrow or broad, which means the width of the cord can be varied depending upon the kind of texture that you are planning on the final product. Do you know why Bedford cords get their name? Because these fabrics were first woven in New Bedford, which is in Massachusetts. That's the reason why these fabrics are called as Bedford cords. The fabric is durable and it is made from either cotton or worsted yarns. We spoke about the fact that the cords could be broad or narrow. So, the width may range from 1/20th inch to 1/4 inch. To get extra weight without altering the appearance of the fabric, the extra warp yarns called as wadding ends are inserted in between the face, weave and the filling. These wadding ends float at the back of the fabric. When the wadding ends used are very coarse, they give a pretty rounder appearance to the fabric or more rougher texture to the fabric. So, one can see around 88 to 156 picks per inch in a Bedford cord. The purpose of wadding threads is to increase the prominence of these cords and also increase the weight, the bulk and the strength of the fabric. These wadding ends, they never interlace with the weft, but they lie perfectly straight between the ridges of the respective cords and the floating weft at the back. The wadding threads are wound upon a separate warp beam and they are held at a greater tension than the face warp threads during weaving. The cord effect seen in Bedford cords is only on the face or the back of the cloth. Classification of Bedford cords. Bedford cord is mainly classified into two categories: plain faced Bedford cord and twill faced Bedford cord. Plain faced Bedford cords can be made on alternate picks and on pair of picks. Irrespective of where they are made, wadded ends are used for making Bedford cords. Plain faced Bedford cords, the cord or rib effect is pronounced by alternating a plain weave with the cord either on alternate picks or on pair of picks. Twill faced Bedford cord is made only on alternate picks. Here as well, the wadded ends are used. A twill weave is used instead of a plain weave along with the cord, giving a more pronounced rib effect. In this type, the warp is brought more prominently to the surface. Now, what are the uses of all these Bedford cord fabrics? Medium weight Bedford cord fabrics made in cotton or spun rayon are used for dress wear, for sportswear and for ornamental trimming. But the more heavier weight Bedford cords made with cotton are used for soft furnishing. The Bedford cords made of worsted yarns are used for suiting purposes. These Bedford cords are also used for shirting, coating, upholstery and uniforms as well. They are also used for making riding gear, the riding clothes or the breeches, uniforms, hats, shirts, upholstery fabrics and draperies. In the next section, we are going to talk about pique fabrics. The word pique is a French word. It means quilted. The fabrics are soft and they have a raised surface, usually on the back of the fabric. Technically, pique fabrics show rounded cords or veils in the filling direction with pronounced sunken lines in between them. On the face or on the front of the fabric, it looks like a plain weave, but on the back of the fabric, one can see floats in warp direction or in the lengthwise direction. The width of these floats on the back of the fabric depend on the width of the cord. Stuffer yarns, additional warp and filling yarns are used to contribute or are used to increase the weight, bulk, firmness, and they also contribute to the design on the fabric. The stuffer yarns are not interlaced into the weave structure, though they can be removed very easily. The veils on the fabric are crosswise. The stuffer yarns move crosswise, making the floats appear vertical. Pique is a plain weave variation. It could be made on a dobby loom attachment. And the pique weave produces fabric with veils or cords which are raised slightly by floats on the back. The raised lengthwise cords or geometric designs are a characteristic feature of these fabrics, giving it a 3D effect. The veils or cords vary in width. They could either be wide veil or a pin veil. These veils are parallel to the warp yarns. That is what one should be remembering. The fabrics are produced in different weights, ranging from lightweight fabrics to heavyweight fabrics. Lightweight fabric example is dimity and heavyweight fabric example is waffle cloth. The 3D effect on these fabrics appears to be embossed one. Quite often you see pique fabrics in white color or just plain solid colors, which means only one color. The quality of the fabric depends upon the stuffer yarns that are used to make this weave. Obviously, better quality piques have good quality stuffer yarn, which means a larger size or large spun stuffer yarn, as opposed to small numerous stuffer yarns. Better quality piques are also made by using long staple combed and mercerized stuffer yarns. One can also make carded yarn piques. Now these carded yarn piques are very often printed and they do not show stuffer yarns in their structure. One has to take special care when you are maintaining pique fabrics. They can only be ironed on the back, because ironing on the face flattens the veils that are there, reducing the aesthetic appeal or appearance of the fabric. Now, let us see the properties of pique fabrics. They are resistant to wrinkling, which means they do not show any wrinkles during normal wear and tear or normal use. They have more body, but they have very less drapability when compared with other fabrics. As the veils are based on stuffer yarns, if the stuffer yarns become bigger or coarser stuffer yarns are used, the body of the fabric increases, but the drape decreases, which means they are inversely proportional. Pique fabrics are durable because of the number of veils that are there on the surface of the fabric. They are aesthetically superior in terms of looks. They are also resistant to tearing across the stuff or yarn area. If at all tearing occurs, then it is in the warp direction because the fabric is weaker in between the veils. Piques are more rounded, and the larger veils in case are there in the fabric, then it has lower abrasion resistance. What are all the examples of pique fabrics or pique weave fabrics? Dimity, Bengaline, bird's eye, goose eye, waffle cloth, huckaback. Where are all these pique fabrics used? They are used in apparel area or sector, and they are also used interiors or furnishings, especially the bullseye, the bird's eye and pinwheel pique are used for apparel and interior furnishing. So friends, today we spoke about a number of complex weaves like Leno, mock Leno, Bedford cords and pique.